it stopped acting like one big entity. It made it a bit less agile, and of course, like suddenly justified for some roles 4 times more staff. And things became big, and the head count grew really fast through 2020 and 2021 specifically. And I think that was a turning point. It wasn't necessarily bad, but it needed such careful management and like delicate handling of all the relations that no one was sort of ready or equipped for, coming from a mentality of less than 100 people.
But that wasn't the only sweeping change under Edvard Koenig and Matthias Kirch's newly reformed leadership. In 2019, the first year after one full term of operation without the former executive team, the company's cash on hand halved. Its profit declined. The company's total liabilities skyrocketed. And this doesn't necessarily show us the whole picture, just what EK has self-reported and categorized. The pair also aggressively expanded into new markets. In the US, they assigned the CEO role to their longtime mutual friend, Kat Silberstein. They expanded into Bosnia and Herzegovina under longtime friend Vera Nunic. They added small offices in Japan and China, expanded into Serbia under Marko Mitrovic, introduced to Matthias Kirch by a high-paid EK consultant who is also the director of an important entity that we'll encounter later in the story. And Mitrovic had valuable connections for EK, especially with lenders, both private and institutional, across multiple countries. At no point in this expansion, however, did EK purchase its own manufacturing equipment. Joe Roby told us that it didn't own a single CNC. This is unlike other water cooling companies in the business, and while this has some upsides for ramping scale rapidly, it also has downsides in cost control over production runs and owning your own assets, which is always valuable for a business. So it's a rarity among water cooling companies. Today, EK Waterblocks has numerous employees, contractors, and suppliers who have been unpaid for varying periods of time. It owes tens of millions of dollars, as we understand it, and is taking on new credit at higher interest rates to pay older debts at lower interest rates, which puts it in a precarious position. It still is taking orders that, with the amount of lawsuits it now faces, we are not convinced will entirely ship, depending on how late into this cycle it continues taking those orders and at what point, if it happens, the switch flips. And all of that is the hyper-condensed history up until the critical time window of 2019 to 2024. And that sets the stage for our title. This story gets very confusing to follow if not organized a certain way. I actually spent weeks trying to figure out how to put it all into a video anyone could make any sense out of. So, while conducting this investigation, we'd originally planned to present the information by topic. And what we found was that it just simply was too difficult to understand with all the different names, places, and entities involved in the story. What we realized was that many of the tips, leaks, and other evidence in the story and our sources were all pointing to basically 4 key people: the executives and the leaders over the last 5 or so years. Ultimately, this is a story about the downfall of EK and what we believe to be is its destruction based on its plummeting profits and reputation, along with the mountains of evidence and reports we've received of continued failure to pay owed wages and taxes, many of these proven with substantial evidence. And so there's just no way we can tell this story without discussing the top-ranking owners, CEOs, and officers who had a responsibility ethically, financially, and oftentimes legally to operate the company in such a way that it is safe and responsibly run and is able to pay its debts. We believe they failed to do so. Based on the evidence, the 4 people we're discussing are the ones we think contributed to the downfall of this company. Here are the names you need to know: Edvard Koenig, Matthias Kirch, Marko Mitrovic, Kat Silberstein, Iztok Malicic. Actually, you know what, this is getting just too confusing. So you know what? Let's just assign nicknames, kind of like a bank heist. Except with a bank heist, obviously, you'd be stealing money. Well, okay, but you would probably be breaking the law. You know what, let's just move on. Although there's a web of dozens of people and companies that we've tracked back to their roots, ultimately, it's the leaders who drive all the decisions in an organization. There are 4 leaders in recent history. Marko Mitrovic is the demolitions expert with an explosive temper, who we've heard in recordings berating and belittling employees and even his co-executives. Mitrovic is connected to massive, repeated expenses, largely related to the EK Serbia branch that he runs. But he's also silently involved in EK HQ in Slovenia. He is the powder keg. Matjaž Kurč is the egotistical getaway driver and scapegoat. He was appointed as CEO by longtime friend and founder Edvard Koenig, investing in products built on spite, like the EK Sim Racer. When Koenig ousted Matjaž Kurč earlier this year, he took to the camera to insinuate that Kurč is the reason for EK's failures. Matjaž Kurč is the fall man. Kat Silverstein is the smooth talker who goes to every event imaginable with industry influencers, executives, and financial controllers. She helmed EK's US branch and calls herself CEO of EK Americas, spending company money on endless networking endeavors. She is the charmer. And Edvard Koenig is the desperate inside man. He founded the company, starting from selling handmade blocks for cash in parking lots decades ago. He's an engineer at heart who ended up over his head, making a series of bad decisions and appointments, and more recently, aggressive legal action. His own leadership has described him as easily manipulated, with the last person who spoke to him having the most influence. He is the puppet. Look, obviously this analogy is a bit silly, and we don't want to seem like we're diminishing the severity of the roles these people played, but I just spent the last 5 months trying to wrap my head around all the different people and elements of the story, and it's been very difficult. We needed a device to try and make it easier and define the roles we think each of these people play. As they say in Slovenia, riba smrdi pri glavi, or the fish rots from the head. We'll start there. Founder and CEO Edvard Koenig can be found on Slovenia's top 100 wealthiest people lists. However, this past year has been a whirlwind for him. We'll break this section into 3 topics: unpaid staff and suppliers, a lone death loop, and threats. Under Edvard Koenig's ownership, EKWB has a history of pay disputes by contractors. In 2019, Koenig was summoned to court by a judge in a former contractor's case, but he chose to send a representative instead. Unhappy with this, the judge awarded contractor Sasha Kostelic damages and unpaid wages in 2021 for 2019. So the behavior is not new, but 2023 started to show some major cracks.
I guess the signs were first the difficulty with suppliers, and samples just not coming, like parts not coming because suppliers hadn't been paid. So that was the first awareness to the situation that I would have, and that was probably during 2023 already.
In early 2024, the situation worsened when EK failed to pay external contractors. Again, most we spoke with couldn't be named due to ongoing legal proceedings against EKWB. But among people who were willing to go on record was Dave Alcock, the former EK public relations representative, of all the people to not pay, for EK.
I'm Dave Alcock. At EK, I was doing marketing and PR, so dealing with press, media, and modders. The reason I left is quite simply I hadn't been paid for coming on 2 months, and I was struggling. Previous to the payment that I hadn't been paid for 2 months for that as well. So I'd gone like 2 months, then got payment, then another 2 months of no pay, and then I got a promised date, didn't get paid on that date, and it was just tough. So it was just money. I live like most people, paycheck to paycheck still, and yeah, I couldn't not be paid for months in a row, and there was no. Every time I asked for some kind of sort of definitive answer on when are we going to get paid, because even that, just being open and telling us what date we'd be paid on as an actual date would have helped me a lot. But there was just, we don't know when money's coming in, we don't know where it's coming from, blah blah blah, and it was just tough.
What were you under any like sort of personal financial pressure as a result of that?
Oh yeah, I'm under financial pressure still, even though I've got a job, full-time job, and I'm getting paid, which compared to EK's, that's a novelty in itself. Getting paid is quite nice, but even now, so I missed the mortgage payment in February. I think it was either January or February, I can't remember exactly, and this was right before my mortgage renewal was coming up, and because of that, my credit rating tanked. So I lost, I think it was 60 points or 80 points. And before I was on a perfect credit score. So I was on like the highest you could be on every single site to check your credit rating. That tanked quite significantly. And because of that, we went to get our mortgage renewal. And they said, oh, the initial rate we offered you is no longer available to you. So the new rate's going to be this. And we'll have to lock you in for 3 or 5 years to keep that rate.
Right.
It's about £100 more than the original one. So £100 times 12 times 5 is what it's cost me initially because of
So they
not being
actually
paid.
caused some. I mean that would be. That's not just the sort of damage of missing the payments, but it's actually it has a knock-on effect as well.
Yeah. And obviously now I've not had a payment miss since, because I wouldn't have missed that payment had I known that the money wasn't coming, because I could have moved stuff around, but it goes back to them not telling me when we are going to be paid. And if I moved stuff around, I'd incur charges from other places, but I wouldn't have incurred such a charge. I'd have moved some credit card money across, so I'd have had to pay more percentage back initially.
Right.
But I could have done it.
At the very time Dave describes not getting paid by EK, he was still contracted to do public relations work, and this included replying to people on Reddit defending EK, as not doing so could risk his job.
The hardest part, as you mentioned, I was one of the people that weren't getting paid, and I was the one that was getting all the hate, because I was the public figure on like Discord and the water cooling channels. I was a public figure on like the EK Reddit posts, and everyone's telling me to pay the employees and stuff. I'm like, dude, I'm the one that's not paid here. Like, chill. I'm the one that's missing my mortgage payments.
I bet you were still working. I mean, you were still performing work.
Oh yeah.
By May, EK would spiral past just suppliers and contractors and would start showing trouble paying its employees at the Slovenia headquarters. The first company-wide impact to employee payments in Slovenia was on May 15th, which is payday for EK, or it was. Rather than send money, EK sent a last possible minute email to employees on payday, notifying them that they'd need an extra 3 days to make payments. EK then missed this date, but we needed another source. Joe Roby confirmed on record that EK was late for the month of April, due in May.
I think that the main contributing factor that immediately forced me to, really seriously think about it was when the first payment was delayed in April. I just collectively, with Sasha's payment also being delayed, right? For context, like my wife also works at EK, and when your entire household income is just like, oh, this might not come ever, or maybe it will come next week, or maybe it's just a day late, and suddenly your entire income becomes uncertain. It's a huge problem.
Next, this letter was sent on June 27th from Vera Nunic, EKHQ HR head. It informed employees that the Slovenian summer bonus regress payment would be postponed. It promises the obligatory summer bonus instead in October. This is where it started to rapidly unravel. An employee responded in company chat with this massive message expressing frustration with last-minute communication and unmet promises. EK then emailed employees in response, stating that they'd prepare a payment plan. On July 3rd, approximately 40 EK employees were terminated or quit. This included people from RMA, R&D, marketing, assembly, basically every aspect of the company, even product managers. So it's an interesting payment plan. We'll see how it works. But EK told its staff that anyone who didn't believe in the company should leave.
Of course, they can say that this was like a voluntary restructuring on their part, but it's not. So many of those employees left of their own accord, and during some meetings, they'd even invited that. Right, there were meetings where they said, if you're not believing in what's in front of you today, please, hand in your notice, or we'll put you on the list for the next wave of redundancy. And when they did that, so many people went forward that they pretty much had to stop them.
On July 15th, Koenig sent this message to the company. It states, quote, "The situation is still conducive to the fact that there will be no payment of salaries today. Many of us are not in the office, but we are with you." 2 days later, Koenig sent this, quote, "Unfortunately, there will be no salaries today and tomorrow." EK was now at risk of breaking Slovenian labor laws for multiple missed payments in rapid succession. The result was a labor inspectorate investigation, which EK notified employees about on the monitors in the office. Following this exchange, some workers pleaded with Koenig as they were unable to pay for school supplies for their children. Others sent us proof of their credit scores tanking from missed payments. Although some employees, like Joe Roby and his wife, could go on record to confirm with us that they were still owed tens of thousands of dollars, most of the employees could not. And that's because, as we understand it, there's approximately 40 former EK employees who are beginning legal action against EK water blocks, not counting contractor and supplier lawsuits that may also be active. Surely then, these must be some pretty expensive employees, if not paying